Hey everyone, welcome back to On Purpose, the number one health podcast in the world. Thanks to each and every one of you that come back every week to listen, learn, and grow. Now, I know that our community is dedicated to living happier, healthier, and more healed lives. And I love sitting down with people who are dedicated to their own happiness, their own health, their own healing, and doing that for the world through their work. And I have to be honest, it's not every day that you get to sit down with someone you admire, you're inspired by, you look up to, and someone who is truly the definition of the word GOAT. I'm talking about the one and only Sir Lewis Hamilton, 7-time Formula One world champion, someone with over 100 race wins, considered the most successful F1 driver of all time. And Lewis's willingness to embrace what makes him different has defined his values and outlook on life. And in 2014, those values saw him win BBC's Sports Personality of the Year, followed 2 years later by a position in Time magazine's 100 Most Influential People list. Lewis received both accolades for a second time in 2020, in a year that saw him become a leading voice in the global fight for racial equality. In doing so, he was recognized as British GQs Game Changer of the Year and Powerlist's most influential Black person in the UK. And further to this, Lewis won the 2020 Laureate Sportsman of the Year award, and most notably was formally recognized with a knighthood in 2020 New Year's honors for his outstanding achievements and contribution to motorsports on the track and off the track. Lewis is also a passionate activist for so many underrepresented groups and communities. His Mission 44 is doing incredible work. Please welcome to On Purpose, Lewis Hamilton. Lewis, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
No, this honestly is a special one for me. It's been one of those ones that, you know, when I first launched the podcast, there were a few names that I wanted to sit down with, and you were one of those names. So for me, it's a very special moment. And for this to be your first ever podcast, which you just told me, I didn't even know. And you literally told me this like 10 minutes ago. And in my head, I'm thinking, wow, I'm so grateful to have that honor, honestly.
Oh, no,
that's
the honor's mine. I'm really so grateful for everything you do. And so I've been following and listening to you, and you sent me the book a long time ago already. So I really appreciate everything you're doing today.
Oh, well, thank you, man. Thank you. And I'm excited to unpack your journey because, as we said, because it's your first podcast, people have heard parts of you, but we don't really understand the depth and the texture of Lewis Hamilton. And so I guess I want to start in a different place, and we'll kind of go through on this journey. I wanted to ask you, what do you feel is the hardest thing you've had to do in order to be who you are today?
I think continuing to have the belief in myself and not letting that veer off. Since I was young, since I've been told from my teachers that I would never amount to nothing. The bullying or the things that you face, the adversity you face, the discrimination, and just continuing to keep your head up, continuing to march on ahead towards your dream and never losing sight in that. I think that's definitely for sure the most difficult thing is keeping your goal and your eyes set on that and not being distracted, not giving up. I think the easiest thing in life is to give up on whatever you're focused on or whatever you're hopeful for. The hardest thing is to keep going, but we have to continue to hold on. And I would imagine for so many people out there, that is probably the most difficult thing.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer, because I think people look at you and they assume that you never have to make that choice, right? They see someone in your position, someone who's achieved what you've achieved, and the assumption can be, oh yeah, but he's the greatest. He was just always that way, and he doesn't have to make that choice every day. But as you said, since the beginning of your life, whether it's childhood, whether it's breaking into a sport that wasn't set up for you, there have been so many moments. Let's go back to school. Let's talk about some of that more in depth, because I feel like a lot of people struggle at school, but you kind of went through a lot of altercations and adversities at that time. What were some of the things you were hearing, some of the bullying, some of the racism, the experiences that you had that felt limiting or made it feel like it was easier to give up?
I think for me, school was probably the most traumatizing and most difficult part of my life.
Wow.
I already was being bullied at the age of 6. I think at the time, that particular school, I was probably one of 3 kids of color, and just bigger, stronger, bullying kids were throwing me around a lot of the time. I was always the last picked in when you're standing in the playground and you're in the line of when they're picking teams for football, I was always the last one chosen or not even chosen, even if I was better than somebody else. And then the constant jabs, the things that are either thrown at you like bananas, or people that would use the M word just so relaxed. People calling you half-caste and, just really not knowing where you fit in. That for me was difficult. When you then go into like history class and everything you learn in history, there are no people of color in the history that they were teaching us. So I was thinking, oh, well, where are the people that look like me? And I mean, for me, in my school, there was only around 7, maybe 6, 7 black kids out of 1,200 kids. And 3 of us were put outside the headmaster's office all the time. The headmaster just had it out for us, and particularly for me, I would say. So like just juggling all these different emotions that you're feeling. Plus I struggled at school. I didn't find out till I was 16 that I was dyslexic. Fortunately, I came across a teacher that was actually caring and took me down that road and helped me discover a little bit more about myself and how I can better myself through education. But I think that for me was tough. Also, because I was racing every weekend, I would leave on the Thursday night. We would travel, pack up the motorhome. We would travel around the country to race on the weekends. And no one else knew. When I'd get back to school, all the kids have done normal things on the weekend. And I'll come back and say I was racing, and people would be like, "Oh, I've done that before," like at the theme park or something. But no one really knew what my goal was, and they thought maybe it was a joke. You miss a lot of that social interaction. Also, I was put in all the lowest sets at school and told that if you do well, you can progress, and they never ever let me progress, no matter how hard I tried. So I really felt that the system was really up against me, and I was kind of swimming against the tide. But I'm so grateful for that journey, because that's what built me to the person that I am today. But there were a lot of things that I suppressed, because I couldn't go home and say, hey, I didn't feel like I could go home and tell my parents that, these kids kept calling me the N-word today. I got bullied. I got beaten up at school today, or I wasn't able to defend myself. I didn't want my dad to think I was not strong. And so I would, if I had tears, I would hold them back. If I had emotions, it would be in a quiet place. And it wasn't really till I started racing that I was able to channel this emotion that I had into my driving. And it's like when I put this helmet on, Superman was my favorite. I loved how he fought for the people, and I loved how he did the right things. And he was a really inspiring character for me. But again, no superhero was of color. So, but you can still aspire to be someone if they don't look like you, And so I remember going to karate. I remember putting this helmet on in racing, and it felt like it was my cloak, that my superpowers could come out when I was driving. And I was battling with these kids, and I was able to do things that they seemed to not be able to do as well. And that was my love.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, mine was opposite. I was bullied a lot at school as well. I was one of 5 people of color in my primary school. And I was also overweight. And so I was bullied for that. And obviously, my parents are from Indian backgrounds. And so they'd gone through it much worse than I did when they'd moved to England. But the difference was that I would go cry to my mum, and then my mum would come try and save the day in school, and that was the worst. That was so embarrassing. Like your mum's like telling the teacher what happened, and then I'm like, oh no, mum, don't do this. And then it's even more embarrassing because the kids pick on you going, oh, mum came to save you.
Yeah, mummy's boy.
Yeah, mummy's boy. So that was my version of it. I wasn't scared of crying to my mum, but then it had different things. But yeah, that's so hard as a kid when you're going through that. And you're trying to find yourself, you're trying to figure out what confidence is. You don't even know what that means. You feel like not going to school. But then even though you're saying you found it in racing, I mean, racing was similar because you were working class. You're still to this day the only working class black driver to do as successfully as you have. So not only do you have it at school, you also have it in your passion, like in the thing that is your cloak, is your Superman. So how does it feel when you're also dealing with it in that area where you've discovered what your passion or your interest is at that age, What does it feel like when you're getting it in that space?
It's inescapable. You use that as an escape, but then you're confronted with it also. And so I was just grateful that I had this amazing figure in my dad. I got one of my best friends, like his dad was never there. I know there's not many people that have separated parents, and being shared between parents is not an easy thing. Some days with your mom and some days with your dad. My mom was the soft, loving parent. So that's where I feel like I learned a lot of compassion and empathy. That's where I feel like I get it from her. And my dad was that strong, like kind of stronger rock. And also just someone that looked like me and just, he would say, do your talking on the track. Don't be distracted by it. Don't listen to what they're saying. Do your driving on the track and show, let's just be quiet and walk away as winners, But, again, like your parents, my parents went through, well, particularly my dad was someone that also faced adversity through his life. And he's like, I want to do everything in my power to create a better life for my kid so that they don't feel or experience the things that I've encountered through my journey. And so, but I think for me, it was also difficult having biracial, I'm biracial. So having a white mother, for example, and a black dad, I knew my dad would understand the racial slurs that are thrown at me. My mum couldn't understand it. Mm. So I couldn't really speak to my mum about it. She was loving, but she had never been educated within it. She didn't know anything about Black history and slavery. And so it was a very difficult, but I had love there, which was the most important thing. Yeah. But in the racing, it was like, like kids, you just want to enjoy yourself. You want to be included. And, when you're kind of outcast a little bit, it's difficult for kids, And so that's why today, like, I'm like, if I'm posting something, I hope that when I do click that button, I hope that it is a positive wave for some of the kids out there that are being distracted by all the stuff that's going on around the world.